Okay, we are rolling. So I'm reading from the introduction to Netzach Yisrael of the Maharal. The Maharal asked the interesting question about the name of Yaakov Avinu. We find several times in the Torah where there are name changes. People get new names at milestones in their life. Abraham he's not born with that name. Abraham, he gets that name later in life. He starts off with Abraham and it's changed to Abraham. His wife starts Sarai and then Sarah. Yoshua ben Nun was at first called Hosea, and then Moshe changes that name to Yoshua. There are many instances where people have changes in the name, and that change is always permanent. The Gemara in Nedarim goes so far as to say, Kol hakore Avraham b'shem Avram over ba'aseh. A person who refers to Avram Avinu with his old name of Avram violates a positive commandment in the Torah, because there's something unique. It's not that God gave that name to Avram just for the heck of it. He thought that it was it had a good ring to it.
Even when we say it davening?
Sorry?
Even when we say it in davening?
When do we say it? When we quote the pasuk in Nehemiah? So that is not it's recounting the history of that change, so right? Asher hotzeis me'or kasdim, you took Avram out of the Ur of the Chaldees, but karas shmo Avram. That's right. The whole point is not to refer to him as that, but to say that he's not, right? If a person were to say Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, that's what you want to avoid. The idea being that the name that God is giving has a certain, it embodies the mission of the person. So if the name has changed, that means that it's changed for a specific reason, and ignoring that is ki'ilu, some type of violation of a commandment, not a commandment in the formal sense, but a commandment in that it is Hashem's intention that this aspect of the person should be expressed, and you're going against that in a way. Anyway, with Yaakov Avinu, there is a clear exception to this rule. Yaakov receives a name change, and he receives a name change twice, by the way, which is also something unique. He receives it in the battle with the Ish, with the mysterious man in the middle of the night, and then he receives it later, a few chapters later in the book. He receives it again from Hashem, and we see that Yaakov goes back and forth with this name. He goes back and forth with that name. Sometimes he's called Yaakov, sometimes he's called Yisrael, and there's a lot of discussion amongst the commentaries about what the significance of sometimes being referred to one name, if there even is a pattern, because it's hard to identify a pattern of when he's referred to as Yisrael and when he's referred to as Yaakov. But be that as it may, it's clear that it switches back and forth, even after Yaakov dies, even later in history when we're referring to Yaakov, sometimes he's referred to as Yisrael, sometimes he's referred to as Yaakov, to the point where the Jewish people as a collective are referred to sometimes as Yisrael and sometimes as Yaakov. Right? Like in the last chapters of Sefer Yeshayahu, it's known as the suffering servant chapters. That might be a Christian term, but it talks about this Eved Hashem, this servant of God, being the Jewish people, right? Yaakov Avdi, Yaakov my servant, not Yaakov the individual, but Yaakov the collective of the Jewish people. All this is just to emphasize this fact that Yaakov is given a name change, and the name change and the names oscillate back and forth forever, not just for him, but for all of history. We see that there's an oscillation back and forth. So, what is the significance that of this name change seeming to be not permanent at best and very, very flexible? So says the Maharal the following: Ki Shem Yaakov hu siba l'shem Yisrael. The name of Yaakov is not coming to exclude, right? They're not mutually exclusive, these names. Rather, Yaakov is the reason or the cause for the name of Yisrael. Ki Shem Yaakov nikra miloshan shahaya Yaakov maktin atzmo kmo ekev. Because Yaakov is called by this name because he made himself small, like the heel is small. Small not only in the sense of smallness in size or volume, but smallness in the sense of lowliness. The akev, the heel, is the lowest part of the body. The ein davar yoser shafel min ha'akev, as the Maharal himself says. There's no lower point on the body than the heel. V'davar zeh hasiba she'eh Hashem Yisbarach magbia oso ad sheyikra Yisrael. And embodying this very trait of the shval ruach, the lowliness of spirit, not lowliness of spirit, again, not lowliness of spirit, we've talked about this before. When we use that term low spirit, it means like someone's been sapped of their spirit. When Chazal use that term, like for example, to describe the attributes of the students of Avram, right, shval ruach, it means that someone who has a sense of humility. They're not constantly in the state of grabbing and hunger all the time, thinking that they own everything. Shval ruach means that they have a calmness of spirit, in that sense. So this humility, this attribute of Yaakov, is actually what brings about the capacity for Yisrael, and there is a constant oscillation between these two elements all the time. So this theme of the smallness of Yaakov Avinu, and then leading into the bigness of Yisrael, and then the constant back and forth between these two modalities, is the theme that we're going to go into now with the next two ta'amim. We're in the end section of the Sefer Reish Milan, where it's no longer talking about the letters, but rather the cantillations, the tune, which gives the tonality for the words that we're saying. So it's not just the words, the concrete content, but it's also the backdrop and the tone that we're trying to convey while we're saying the words. So there are two ta'amim that have a similar name. One is called Zakef Katon, and one is called Zakef Gadol, which literally means, Zakef means to stand up straight. Like we say in the brachos in the morning, Zakef Kfufim. God allows the downtrodden or the bent over to stand up straight. Zokef. So Zokef Katan means the small one stands up. That's what that means, Zakef Katan. And the other one is Zakef Gadol, the big one stands up, right? The bigger thing stands up. Zakef, right? To stand up. So these are talking about, as Rav Kook is going to explain, the attributes of katnut, of smallness, versus the attribute of gadlut, of bigness, and the positivity of both of them, the positive expressions of both of them. So we're starting off with Zakef Katon. It says Rav Kook, katnut, the attribute of smallness. Ein kates l'malei olamim shel otzrot hachayim. There is no end to its infinite worlds and storehouses of life. Va'ora, and its light, hagnuzim, that are hidden away bikirba, within it, pnima, internally. Etzem hod hakatnut, the essence of the glory of smallness, hachadira lechol hatzivyonim sheba makea koten, that are infused in all of the depths of smallness. Asher bechol haziiriyut, that's another coinage of Rav Kook. Zeir is another way of saying small, like zeir, like perhaps minute. Right, like small versus minute. Sha'anu nifgashim hinenu motzim olamim leim. When you enter that smallness, you actually discover a whole world. I couldn't help thinking of this, that Dr. Seuss book. Is anyone else thinking of that? I was thinking, right? I couldn't help thinking of it. I'm sorry, I had to bring that reference, right? The Horton thing, exactly, where he discovers that there's this whole like universe on the tip of like a flower or something. Yeah. So you enter into this attribute of smallness, and you discover that there's there's this tremendous richness within. Maskevati et nishmatenu, that uplifts our souls. When our spirit goes into this attribute of smallness, and the myriad of thousands and tens of thousands in the descent into the values of smallness, we find much more of a breadth of reality, shel binyan, of the ability to build, shel orach hayim, of the light of life, shel shichlul v'if'eh, of development, v'hinenu margishim et hachashivut shel hakatnut. And at that point, we can understand the importance of smallness, because he's answering the obvious question that katnut, smallness, at least on its face, would seem like something that we want to avoid. But what is the importance of smallness? Et ha'tamashala im atzma, the ability to be matim, to come to terms with oneself. V'hinenu mitadnim al ma'amakei harum, we see the gentility of the depths of the depths of the heights, v'al romemei hama'amakim, and the depths of the deep, the depths of the heights and the depths of the deep. Now that is a paraphrase from the what?
The heights of the deep.
The heights of the deep, and the heights of the heights. The two terms. Ma'amakei harum. Excuse me, you're correct. Right. Excuse me, I made a mistake. Ma'amakei harum, the depths of the heights. Va'al rumei hama'amakim, and the heights of the depths. That is right. So there's a paraphrase over here. He's already leading into the next section, which is going to talk about gadlut, right? But he's setting the stage over here. There's a paraphrase from the Mishnah in Sefer Yetzirah, which talks about different types of depth. There's omek rum, that's one type of depth, right? Something's very high, and there's another idea called omek tachat, the depths down below. So it's interesting. Even in our English idiom, when we want to say something is profound, we can say that the thing is either very high or very deep. It's interesting how there's deep and high, and he's going to define what is the difference between high profoundness and deep profoundness. And here we find the katnut, the smallness, zekufa, standing straight in all of its glory, right? That is zakef katan, the small stands up. Nafshiutenu, our ha'atzma'it, our independent soul awareness, b'chol ziruta, in all of its minuteness, metztayerati lefanenu b'melo hoda va'anvat tzedek, the attribute of righteous. Asher cherfucha Hashem, asher cherfu ikvot mishichecha. That they have come to disgrace the heels of your anointed. The heels of your anointed. Akev has, again, dual connotations. It has the connotation of tremendous vulnerability and the most reward possible. What is the first time that the word Akev appears in the whole Torah? Can you think of it? What's the first time? It's actually a pretty... What? That pasuk is what? No, that's much later. The first time the word Akev appears is in Parshas Bereshis. The term heel. In the punishment that the Adam and Chava right. Yeah, no. Who Yeshufa Charosh, right? Yeah. That he, man, will crush you will crush the head. The Ata and the snake, you, the snake, Tishufenu Akev, will bite his heel. The heel is the point of vulnerability. That's what it means. And it's interesting, even in, you all know the reference that I'm talking about, even in other cultures, the heel has this powerful symbolism of the point of vulnerability. Even if the thing otherwise is very strong and enduring, that is the point of vulnerability. Yeah? So the Akev is the point of vulnerability, right? Asher cherfu ikvot mishichecha. They're after the heel of your anointed, right? They're trying to find that point where they can come and get me. Yeah? But the heel is also the apex of reward. If you traverse this path that I'm telling you now, there is an akev. There is an akev waiting at the end. And what is the common theme over here? It's like one thing and the opposite. Like the point of the most place of vulnerability, right? And the highest sense of reward. It's that the place that is most vulnerable is where things are coming to the end. That's where things are most vulnerable. Meaning you've invested, you've taken the risk. It's like the experience that comes to mind is like when you're driving, you're making that turn. Once you've committed to the turn, it's like that's the point of most vulnerability. You've exposed yourself now. You're now vulnerable.
Or when you're just coming out of the turn, right? You've just finished and you're coming out of the turn, right? That's what do you do next?
Once you've committed to the thing,
right
we just lahavdil. I'm sorry to bring these horrible mundane examples, but we just experienced the Olympics now, and it's like everyone, when the gymnast does this crazy spin and turn in the air, and everyone's holding their breath. What's the most dangerous moment for that athlete? It's the moment that they're in the process of landing, right? That is the moment. When their heel is touching the floor, just making contact with the floor. That's the most dangerous moment. But the minute that they land it, that's it. That's the reward. They've gotten it. Yeah. So it's these two things, they manifest themselves, they express themselves simultaneously. The point of maximum vulnerability and the point of maximum reward. Right. When Yitzchak Avinu called Yaakov what he called him, he's like, this is how this person is gonna express himself in the world. There is going to be a vulnerability. There is going to be a smallness, which is, we see that Yaakov throughout his life, there's a smallness and there's a vulnerability. But there's a reward. There's a reward there. There's this supernal, sublime reward, which is expressed in the fact that he's holding on to the heels of his brother. That's how it's expressed. He's holding on to the heels of his brother. His brother is going to have his time to shine, right? His super alpha, masculine, right, conquering, violent, aggressive brother is going to have his time. But the one who's holding the heel, the one who's going to come out on top in the end, be'ikvot meshichecha, be'ikvasat de meshicha, is going to be Yaakov. Yeah. So this is the ultimate expression of the katnut and the gadlut playing off of each other. That the ability to be in a state of katnut and to be able to be in that state of acceptance and humility and just retreating inward, it allows for the greatness of gadlut and splendor to be able to express itself afterwards. Yishar Koach.